And we're back today with another episode of the Danay Garcia podcast. And with me today, I have Adam Suschitzky. Adam is the director of photography of Fear the Walking Dead. He helped us put this, kind of reinvent the show in a way that zombies actually look cuter. But Adam's story goes way back. And this is why I'm so excited to bring you here, Adam. Welcome to this conversation. There's nothing like collecting and growing seeds with this gem right here. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to join you, Danay. It's so sweet of you to invite me. I love your podcast.
Thank you, Adam. Let's start with your journey. How did you discovered to choose director of photography on a movie, on a show? Why not photography? What made you kind of like pick this form of art that you're brilliant at? Like, I know things like that are no accident. So I feel like we're all going through, like the world is going through a lot of changes and people are discovering parts of themselves. So I always love, when I love and admire someone and somebody's work, I always love to go to the seed of how it all started. How did it start for you?
Thank you, Danay. You're so generous. I grew up in a family of filmmakers.
Great.
My earliest memories are climbing up onto a stool in my father's darkroom at the top of our house and watching with amazement as he produced prints in a darkened room in the attic. And from that moment, I think I must have just been a few years old. I was spellbound by image making and the possibilities of the magic of making an image. And I would watch him, and I would watch my grandfather, who shared the darkroom. And They were both cinematographers, but they were both photographers as well. So image making was like a way of life. It was like you cooked dinner, you also made a print. With the camera everywhere. Everybody was taking photos around me. I was in them. I would take my father's camera. Image making was just something that was like making a cup of tea. So I grew up with this from a young age, and I would visit my father on his films. He made movies and was in the UK for quite a while whilst I was growing up. And my grandfather equally. And so I had this, I began to, I suppose, realize that image making was such an exciting opportunity. And there were books everywhere in the house, and I devoured every books of photography and art, and I would devour every book I could find. I became very, very fascinated from a young age with black and white photographers of the 40s and 50s. Particularly Cartier-Bresson and people like war photographers. Eventually, as a teenager, I became very fascinated by war photography. For me, this was sort of, the bravery of the photographer, the extraordinary emotional...
Documenting, right? Like extremes.
And I think I was fascinated by the storytelling. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was these stories I was looking at in each image. And I absorbed every frame of them. I can still sort of see, I have like a bank of images in my mind, I suppose. So photography was sort of the starting point for me. And then cinematography was such an excitement because my father was making The Empire Strikes Back when I was 8 years old.
My gosh!
So these enormous sets that I would visit as a kid and just see all
magic,
these amazing sets that were being built. And so I think it was fairly inevitable that I, would follow that path because I was so inspired and excited by what.
Now as you're saying this, it's super easy in your family to create a family tree since you have so much footage and so much content within, the photography and document being part of your life with your father, grandfather. And I mean, right? Like it's a lot.
It is. And at first it was a sort of a pressure because I thought, wow, how will I ever be as good as them? How will I ever find my own voice
Right.
in the sort of shadow of these great filmmakers and great photographers? And so, but it became much more of an inspiration than anything that held me back. I just felt I'm going to go and explore the world in my own way. And they were very encouraging. They taught me how to use the camera, how to make the photographs and make the prints. And eventually, as I went into film school, I would ask questions about cinematography.
Right.
My father and grandfather were very, very generous. They wanted me to find my own voice, and they never sort of pushed their style on me. They were encouraging of me to find my own voice. So I was very, very fortunate
A-
to grow up in the environment.
Adam, you know what's interesting? It's that, and this goes for all the arts. It's like even for ballet dancers, everybody tries to kind of look up to what is being done, and what is was done was classic. It was beautiful. It's like The Empire Strikes Back, like how what a classic, and the fact that they both had the intelligence to kind of pass on what they know, that you were already inspired and you were able to create and recreate your own style and your own vision, which is like unique and special. And it's something that I kind of admire so much from artists that come from generations that been influenced so young, by great artists too, and how they find their own path and language to tell the story, to visualize it, and that says a lot about the intelligence that they had and they still in you, and your obviously perseverance to discover that within yourself. But it sounds easy, but I think that's the hardest one, right, to discover.
I think I mean, a lot of it is just great parenting. I was very fortunate that both parents, so my mother too, who didn't have a creative career, but was very creative herself. And she's a sculptor and a painter and
Oh,
a writer, and always gave me great confidence that what I was doing at any point was the right thing. And I think that's the best thing you give your children
your
is
child.
confidence in
Yeah.
them. So yeah, I feel like it's a privilege when you grow up in a creative environment. Um, it's also creativity is just something I think a lot about.
Mhm.
Danay, when you have that in you, you have to do it. It's something that it's just such an instinct that on a daily basis you need to create.
Mhm.
And at one point, my father said to me, you have a gift and you have to use it.
Yeah.
And that has just sort of stayed with me. And I take photographs as much as I make, TV shows. I'm constantly carrying a camera, either at work or off work,
Mhm.
day and night. It's sort of it's like a life's quest to improve your storytelling and to try to capture the world around you if you're not making it as a script, which fascinates me. I like to go into the real world and find the stories that exist out there in my own doorstep.
And those moments are never be repeated, and those moments are never going to be exactly the same at the same time. It's that
Yeah,
it's that decision that you take to grab your camera and capture it, and there will always be that moment.
that's right. You're right, and when I look at my grandfather's images from the 1930s, I just think,
Oh,
oh, this is such a legacy that he's left the world and he's left the family. But anybody who cares to look at those, and you feel like the world is always changing, but it's also about trying to just leave a little notebook that you had yourself
it's a
in all
little
the places.
diary.
It's like a little visual diary, and and that's sort of the motivation, really, is to try to capture the world as I see it in my time.
Adam, I never told you this, and this I do a lot. I get to kind of talk to people I adore, and I get to tell them observations I have about their work and your art. And do you think that when you capture images or when you style something, do you think that has a lot to do with how you feel inside? Like a projection, I feel like there's a connection there. Like your own, you bring yourself to the table too. It's not just the camera and an angle trying to take a picture. Otherwise, anybody would do it. I think that with you, as a director of photography, I noticed, because we worked for like a few seasons, that a lot of the tone that you create, especially on a set, has a lot to do with how you feel centered wise, how you project the world, how you want to see, for example, this apocalypse that is dark. It's kind of like an interpretation. It's an emotion that it comes from inside you. And I can see it also in your pictures when you post them on Instagram. And I will be putting all your stuff out so people can really understand this part of the conversation. And I feel like I know how you feel when I walk on set, by the way you visualize this moment that is obviously written in the script. I mean, it's not like you you change the entire story, but you bring a deep side of you to the table with like smoke and lights that I'm not just telling the story from a Luciana's perspective but I'm also feeling your take on it, your print. And I wanted to ask you if this is something that I'm kind of feeling, because I never, when you're like in the middle of work, I'm never going to go to you. I'm like, Adam, wow, I'm glad you feel inspired. Like I'm not going to like, it's hard to kind of have those moments, but it's something that has carried with me every time I show up on set and you are the DP, you're directing this photography. And I wanted to ask you, is this connected? Is something is connected?
This is a beautiful question, and I just love how sensitive you are to what's going on around you. When you're carrying so much pressure as an actress, it's wonderful that you're seeing the bigger picture. I always
feel
had that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, we both, share something which is much, that filmmaking is a much deeper process than just the role that you're playing.
Of course.
And I don't mean that just as a character. I mean your role within the filmmaking process.
Within the film, yes.
Yeah. And so I draw inspiration from many different avenues when making a story as a cinematographer. Obviously, the script is the starting point. Then the conversations with the director. But I also get wonderful inspiration from the acting, and I feel that the tone of the cinematography has to be very in concert with the acting. So I really take my lead from the performance and what style that is shaping into. So I will make plans for myself of how to light a scene, but ultimately how the camera interacts and how the lighting will be finished, I leave to the last moment when I'm feeling the scene and feeling the tone of what I've just watched. When the blocking happens and the staging is happening, and I'm getting my final sort of finishing touches in my own mind. Okay, now I see finally how this scene really needs to feel, because it has to feel. You have to feel something from images.
So you bring yourself to it. You
have to bring your heart and soul to cinematography, and you have to visually interpret and visually translate the words on the page, and visually support the emotional content of the writing, but the emotional moments of the acting. So cinematography for me is sort of operating on so many levels, and you have to allow your heart to be connected to the people in front of you, the space that you're in, the narrative that you're making, and connect it from one episode that you may have done many weeks ago to the next, so that you create something coherent. But ultimately, I like to be very instinctive, that you allow your instincts of the day to
Yes.
operate. Because great actors do that. You do that, Danay.
Yeah.
I was always so impressed how prepared you are. You come to the set and you've really thought about the scene in the context, and
Hmm.
you come with ideas and you come with passion, but you come with an open mind and an open heart. And
Hmm.
I take a leap out of your book, and I think that's exactly how the cinematographer has to be. They want
Right.
to be prepared, they want to have ideas, but they also need to respond to the moment and celebrate that moment. So that's how I try to approach it.
And also be surprised. I feel like I feel like you have this kind of surprise element to your work that it's never predictable, and that translates in every area, like in your daily photography on the streets, on your on a set, on things that you do, and when it's dreamy, when it's like death, when it's dark, when it's light. There's that kind of surprise element to the photography that I never expected it will happen, or I never expected that it will make me feel that way.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I love about your job, and I respect it with all my heart, is that there's nothing more transparent when you get to a set and you rehearse and everything is dark. It's like a white canvas, and you kind of
Mhm.
block the scene, you visualize it, you get the tone, like you said, and then
Yes.
actors, we go to makeup and hair, and we just leave that white canvas empty just for you. And then when I show up again, that entire canvas is painted, and it's lit up and it has colors, and it's weird because it could be a location that when we block it, it's kind of like a white canvas. Yes, things are green, but nothing. It's like you come and you paint your story, and then we come and then
Yes.
we keep evolving from there until it's the final take. And I
Mhm.
love, again, I never told you that I love that process
Mhm.
of your job that is so connected to the story, so connected to the end goal. And I see you guys as I see you as a painter that paints everything, puts fog and puts smoke and smells, and things feel and smell
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And I never, sometimes I never know how the scene is gonna feel until I get there and it's lit up by you. Once I
Mhm.
see your tone, I know where
Yeah.
you're heading, and it already
Right.
changes my mood as an
Yeah.
actor, and right away the character kicks in, and it's a process that I'm always again surprised. It's that surprise element. I feel it.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating to talk with you because as a cinematographer, we don't get time to talk on
I
set with the
know,
actors.
I know.
You arrive and it's
You're
already
painting.
going. Yeah.
You're
So
like, you're like, oh,
yeah,
grab me that one
you're in
and
the picture.
red.
It's wonderful to have this opportunity to hear your side of it. Of course, it really is exciting to start in the morning. Either you're on a set and there are no lights turned on. We just turn up and we're
It's
creating
empty.
from nothing.
Yeah.
And you arrive and the actors create this amazing scene in front of my eyes. And as a cinematographer, I think it's your job to celebrate what is being given to you. I mean, it's like a gift that you get to observe these great performances on a wonderful piece of writing and then start to add your skills and your
Yeah.
paintbrush, like you say,
Yeah.
to frame this little gift that you're being handed. And I think it's terribly precious to allow the acting to take the precedence and to frame that. And I don't just mean framing from a camera point of view, but to the canvas, that you allow the actors space to use that space and to interact in ways that is not prohibiting this wonderful spark that you all bring.
Hmm.
So the painting has to be, as you describe it so beautifully, has to get that tone, but also provide an environment that is going to give the best opportunity for those performances. And I can sense when we get it right with the placement of a camera, I feel the performance sort of resonating and in a way, great harmony with the lens. If you get it wrong, and it can, and I don't mean wrong in a way that it didn't work, but it's not quite as good. You know, the angle might not be quite right, the eye line or the lens that you chose. So I'm always trying to, improve my way of seeing the performance and choosing those lenses and placing the camera in exactly the way that will allow that performance to speak
to
the
shine.
best.
One of the things that I've loved, and I really felt you were painting with colors for real, was when in John Dory's death, when he goes in the water, and all these colors come up, and I actually touched my heart, and I'm like, oh, Adam, I actually was like, Adam is really painting right now. Like he's like, it was such a touching, but it was surreal. It was storytelling to the next level while you're floating. It's like you're really crafting a story without dialogues, it was pure vision that carry you emotionally for like seconds to a point that you just cannot describe what you felt because it was all in front of you, and that that achievement was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever felt on television, especially in this show. That we have a lot of situations. All of a sudden, death didn't feel like death. Death felt like another level of consciousness and beauty and darkness and sadness and strength, and it's everything that these shows represent. Fear the Walking Dead, and you capture the whole moment while John Dory was floating perfectly, beautifully, with the colors and the whole deal. And I remember I reached out and I said, I don't know what I said, but I was very emotional. I was like, oh my God, Adam, unbelievable. I don't know what I said, but I just wanted to say that that was one of the most beautiful deaths I've ever seen in my life. Not even when, in Titanic, Jack falls. It's like, I wish they would have put Adam in there. Just, it's really hard.
It is, yeah. I mean,
that is a canvas right there, right?
You can interpret those moments in so many different ways. Different cinematographers would tackle it in very different ways. But look, I'm blessed on Fear the Walking Dead to work with such a great director, Michael Satrazemis, who we have to mention here, who is phenomenally visual man and taught me so much. I feel like a new filmmaker since I started working with him.
Yeah.
He came from a similar background from being an operator and then a cinematographer himself. That's and right. So we sort of speak immediately the same language. We see things very much the same, and he has been a huge inspiration on the show. So, it was his idea, to use the slow-mo at that moment so you start a conversation about these scenes. We talk a lot about every little detail. And, so he was saying, well, let's use slow-mo. So we go really heightened at this moment. So that immediately sort of inspired me to think, well, okay, so this death is not necessarily, it has to be dark or dreary it's sad, but it's kind of a release.
It's a release.
I think it's sort of a release from this torture this man has been living for so long. So I think subliminally, I wanted the color and the light to just have a sort of a beauty moment where
his soul, you saw John Dory's soul. John Dory's soul kind of came out. Yeah.
Yeah. And he connects with his father under the water. And it's beautifully written. Andrew and Ian, the showrunners, they also have such a visual sensibility. And so you're operating on so many levels before you even turn a camera on. These images are kind of written on the page and then talked about, and then you start to sort of build up an image in your own mind of what it will be. But we have so many great collaborators on this show. Plus, I also love, to give credit to people. We have a digital imaging technician. That's somebody who helps me with the sort of the color of the images. And as we got to that scene, I said to him, I really would love this to be rich and very vibrant. And so he gave me a beautiful color, and we used that color, and it actually stayed that color all the way through to the post-production. So, there's all sorts of collaborations going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But as a cinematographer, you're trying to always frame it in a consistent way. So when people come to you with ideas, much like a director receiving ideas, you're trying to just sort of filter out the ideas that don't quite fit and keep the ones that really do. So collaborating with all of these people creates the final images that you see.
Yeah.
But that was a great opportunity. I mean, it's rare to have moments where you can go into a different sort of heightened world.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do as a cinematographer. You're always sort of having to change gear. 1 minute the scene might be very naturalistic. The next, it's got to have a heightened moment. And how far do you do that? I mean, it's all about tone and taste. I think that you're drawing on so many sort of experiences that you've had in the world and images that you've been inspired by, and you're trying to navigate what would be the best way to tell this moment. So it's
and
great
you're
when
so good at it.
Yeah.
Adam, what I feel like, as artists, you're so sharp when it comes to your creativity and your vision and your intuition. What do you do to nurture that? Like, what do you do as an artist to nurture and honor everything that you've accomplished, create, and how to keep that artistic side of you, moving, hungry to move forward, because it's important to, for those of you or anyone listening, including myself. I mean, this is one of the things I love about this podcast. It's like, again, people I love, appreciate, and adore. I have massive, respect, because you just don't achieve one thing. You keep pushing forward. And what is that one thing that you, or those things, elements, tools that you use to keep that are, part of you alive and hungry and strong?
That's a beautiful question, Danay. And I think for creative people, it's something really vital, really,
Massive.
really vital. I feel, for example, the pandemic, it took me out of work for half a year, more than half a year.
All of
and
us.
I also, for all of us, and I also, something inside me at the time began to fade. My creative energy faded. It suffocated. And I felt it draining away from me. It was very shocking in a way to me. Yes. So it took a while to rebuild that, and you have to look after your creative soul.
Yes.
It taught me that you have to be very, very careful.
It's vulnerable, isn't it? It's very, very delicate.
Very delicate.
It's very delicate. It's very strong. And it's,
yes.
I mean, it's a force too. Like it's not like it's delicate all the time. If you take care of it, it's a force that moves, and the canvas that you create move people. Yes. But we underestimate how delicate and how fragile it is. And when our world crumbles and things stop, how do you take care of that? How?
Well, at the end of that 7 months, I decided it swung me the other way. I suddenly
the pendulum, right? Whoop!
And it did. I sort of thought, hang on a minute. I'm not going to allow this to stop me, and I'm going to actually come back renewed. And so I think what I do is I try to absorb creativity in any way I can. So in the very obvious ways, I often go to museums, and I stand in front of paintings, I stand in front of photography and sculpture, and I just I try to look back all those hundreds of years and just think of those artists and what was it that created this beautiful image in front of me, and why does it work for me? What am I getting from it? And how can I learn from these people? And then on a very practical level, I'm going to take it back to photography, and this is what's great and can be maybe inspiring to some of the people listening, is that you can go out with with a phone and take a photograph. You can take any kind of camera you've got and go into the world and find images that inspire you and teach you something about it. And you take it back home and you sit there and you look at it and you study it and you say to yourself, well, that didn't work. Well, that did work. My God, that was quite beautiful. How did that happen? I just ask myself question upon question about my images that I come back with. And I try to do that on a daily basis.
It's how you keep it up, right?
Today, it's like doing your exercises.
It's a muscle.
It is a muscle. And the more you do it, the more you learn, and the more you feel confident that visual storytelling is something that you can just draw whenever you need to. And then I apply that to my film work. And I come back restored. And I want this feeling that it's a lifelong, I have this feeling it's just a lifelong quest to become a better storyteller, to become a more sensitive storyteller. I think as a young person, I always felt like I knew it all and I was already, very overconfident. And as I get older, and I think I feel like I know less and less. And I want to learn more and more. It's funny how that it happens.
It kind of switches in the way that one day you're at the top of the mountain and you're like, wait, I'm not on top of no mountain. This is like a little tiny little step right here. But your world is so it's you think you're so much bigger than the world, and then all of a sudden, the older you get, you realize you're so much smaller, and the world is so much bigger, and the world that you haven't even discovered, you realize there's something there that you don't even know, but you never questioned before. I think
that's right, and I think in my cinematography, the older I get, the more I want my work to not be visible. I want it to be invisible. And that's something that I didn't want when I was young. I wanted it to be seen and to be heard and to every image to stand out. But I think that now I'm really interested in filmmaking where all the elements become very subtle, from the acting to the photography to the design. You want the audience to be unaware of the process. When I become aware of a camera or lighting in a film or a TV show, I just feel, okay, well, now I'm being taken out of the story. So I want trying to learn more and more to become less and less visible. It sounds funny, but I think those are the films I really, and the stories that when I watch shows that I like the most, those are the ones I'm inspired by, where it just seems to happen so naturally. You're not aware of the process behind what's happening.
You're just an observant, right?
Yeah, you want to just be constantly trying to learn, and walking the streets with a camera. You're looking at the light and how it's falling on a building, or how a tree shadow happens, or you see somebody in a cafe and the light's bouncing off a wall. And I think as a cinematographer, you're just taking these images in your mind and you're absorbing it, and you're trying to then draw on them later.
You draw on them. You draw. It's like when I think of you, I think of a painter that is not covered in paint. it's covering, so you get the best of both worlds. You don't have to wash yourself off.
I mean, I always wished I could have been a painter.
Do you really?
Painter, but I do it with different tools. Yeah, I mean, I do. It's so funny, I can't draw, but I admire people who can draw and to paint. But of course, with cinematography, we do that in our own sort of way. Yeah, we use light and we use shade and how we move the camera.
I would never forget
the
we
painting.
we shot a scene and we were in the middle of nowhere, and I showed up and you were, of course, in the back telling people more smoke. And I remember looking at the lake, looking at the smoke setting into the lake, and I just remember feeling, oh, I know what we're shooting today. Like I wasn't even thinking. I was just landed. I was like, oh, we landed. So that picture it's a painting that touched me. And I was getting off the car about to go back. And I keep bringing that up because I want you to really know how much you impact your surroundings. And I know, we're so busy trying to do our things and we don't think, right? But it really changes the tone of your day the moment you see that picture 360. It's like everywhere you look, it's that emotion. And bear in mind, we're like outside. It's not like we're in a studio with this contain. You go out and you get, sunshine. No, this is it. And we shot in extreme circumstances. So it's not an easy task either.
No, I mean, when you're the DP on a shoot, the cinematographer, you're looking at the weather and what that's going to do to you. You have to be the weatherman. you have you have to literally be so many different hats. You have to help production get the job done on time. The work has to be scheduled so that every shot mustn't take too long. The work has to get a rhythm going so that everybody can move forward. There's so many different things. And I enjoy that. I enjoy all the different hats I have to wear. And then you have physical challenges. Yeah, you're out, like Fear the Walking Dead is a very physical environment. And
I remember I would see, I mean, I'm always wearing the same clothes because it's the character, but I remember seeing you layers and layers and layers and hats and layers and stuff. I'm like, is that Adam? Did he just walk by? Is that him? He looked completely different. Yeah. I mean, and not just you, everybody is like constant layers, taking off layers, putting on layers. Like, is it getting really cold or really hot? And it's like you guys come like prepare for a war. I mean, like,
definitely, you got to be prepared for everything, and it's inspiring to me being outside. That's my favorite. That's why Fear is so much fun for me, because working outdoors and in the American landscape as well is just so it's so fundamental. You feel something when you go out into these beautiful landscapes, and Texas particularly works so well for our show in the winter with the trees looking very sort of smooth and thin and so, you go and you do these big night exteriors, which again, you turn up and there's nothing there. You're in a huge, like that scene with the lake. It's an enormous area. And so it's all about the planning. Yes. And you have to, it's interesting as a cinematographer, you have to pre-visualize what you're going to do. So in conversation with the director, luckily, as I say, we have a very visual director in Michael, and he's very precise about what he wants to do. So I'm able to then plan very complex and very large night exteriors based on that idea. And then come the night, you have to be able to move very quickly and look in one direction, which is very like two soccer, fields of real estate that we're lighting.
Wow.
So planning, you have to sort of be able to paint the picture in your mind of how it's going to look. Long before you even get there.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy the work you do. Like when I get there, you already have sketches and have drawn things, tried, didn't try, and that's why it's so impactful for me as an actor to kind of like, oh, Adam, he already started. I know. I could feel it. There's a weight here of it's because of all that preparation. When you pick a new project for you, when you start reading and feeling and based on what you just said, that you want your work to be more invisible, what are the elements that you pick in a new story? It could be a film, could be television. What is the one thing that you find you look for, you're drawn to at this point in your career?
Hmm. I want to be moved. I want to feel something emotionally by the story. I
Mm.
want to feel that the characters uh, resonate and tell something about the human condition. I think I'm very interested in what it means for us to relate to each other, to exist on this earth. You know, I like stories that not only entertain, but that speak something about the truth of humanity and how we relate to each other. That's a very broad answer because, in fact, you know, stylistically, I'm really interested in lots of different genres,
Right.
and it's exciting to keep varying that. I mean, I'm somebody who's managed to not be typecast. You know, a lot of people just go, "Oh, this guy, he only does comedy. He only does thrillers. He only does sci-fi." Well, I've tried to sidestep, you know, in and out of all those genres because they teach you something each time, and it allows me to sort of start afresh each time. So I'm looking for work that it speaks to me on a human level, but also would allow me to explore the story visually. You know, so I love pieces that have landscape in them, or great cityscapes. I mean, period is great. Obviously, you know, post-apocalyptic is amazing because it's so visual. Um,
Yeah.
but fundamentally, I really love to vary it. You know, I have done in the last few years, other than Fear the Walking Dead, I've done Western, and now I've just done contemporary here in New York. And
Wow.
each time it allows you to try something slightly different and to move forward with your knowledge and your experience and to learn something new. But in the end, I want to read a script that touches me, that really leaves me feeling like, oh, okay, yeah, this story, it really has some meaning to it. And the
Wow.
way that Fear really has substance, it's so, you know,
Yeah.
that show, it never stopped to move me every episode that we would get. So I'm looking for that and a way to keep doing visual storytelling.
Yeah.
So it can be a variety of genres, but it wants to speak to me first of all on the page.
And what is the most challenging thing for you at this point? Knowing what you learn, realizing that you really are not at the top of the mountain, there's a long way to go. What is that one thing that you feel like I have to master this, or I want to explore that, or at this point, or really there's basically nothing after Joan Dory's death. You just kind of
I
nailed it.
believe you me, there's such a long way to go. I think I challenge myself. I push myself to constantly take projects that are harder and harder and harder. You know, I'm always drawn to the most difficult projects that will be, you know, physically challenging because of the weather or the landscape, or immensely complex because of the number of characters. Um, I'm 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 my own worst enemy because I'm very very self-critical, and I want to always feel like I'm improving. So no, I'm very restless to keep expanding my knowledge, and I feel I have a long way to go.
That's so
Yeah,
beautiful. That
it's
is what keeps you as a student. You know, I feel like we are students in our own fields, and the moment you feel like you're done, it's over, right?
that's right. And I love watching performances and learning about that, and I love what, you know, members of the crew will bring to me, you know, ideas. Um, you know, writers collaborating with the writers when they come to set, and it's just the whole thing. You know, as when I started as a teenager taking photographs, I thought I wanted to be a war photographer and you know, go and be Eugene Smith or Don McCullin and put myself in very dangerous places. And then very soon after, my father took me on a movie as a photographer, a small French movie. And I realized straight away, oh my God, it's collaboration that I love. It's not being on my own. yeah, I go out constantly to take photographs by myself, but the film work is where I really get inspiration. It's when I collaborate with this rich group of people who come from all different backgrounds, and you can't, every day you're feeding off that collaboration. That's what's so special about filmmaking.
It is that one place that is magical in that way. It's a bunch of brains working towards a goal, and it's so
Yeah,
intangible. I mean, because it's not a play. You're not gonna see it. You're not gonna get applauses, or you don't know any feedback at the moment, other than your own feedback
yeah,
at that moment, or your intuition. The real result comes 6 months later, if you're lucky.
yeah.
But it's one of those things that you are like, we are our own audience. You are my audience. I
Mm-hmm.
am your audience when you see me. Like, we are each other's basically audience right there, right? In a theater
Mm-hmm.
kind of way.
Yeah, and that's what makes it exciting and sometimes frustrating if you don't get all these elements correct, all these people gelling in the same way. This is what's brilliant about fear, is that everybody
Yeah.
gels so well and is so inspired to work together. Um, but of course, sometimes that doesn't happen on other projects,
Yes.
and
And you have to
you
maneuver that too. It's
have
part
to
of
maneuver
growth.
that, and yeah, and that's part of the process too. But I think fundamentally, I want to arrive each day with my eyes open to something new that I'm going to see and that I'm going to learn from the people that are around me.
Yeah.
I,
It
that's exciting.
and I think that's the most that's really the massive seed for everyone. The arts, it's like, I feel it's a weapon that can work with you and against you. I mean, we've seen so many artists get get lost in it because it's so huge. And I love how some artists like yourself and that find the arts as a way to express, to grow, to be inspired. And sometimes when we lose track of it through this pandemic or whatever, we reach out to museums or places in which you can surround yourself by somebody else's magic that they did centuries ago. Because there's an energy there. And Adam, the little we talked of said, well, we were like, with the crew, whatever, it's that I really think that you are a product of the stuff you watch, the books you read. Um, I feel like your work, it's all connected to every information that you bring to your life. How you surround yourself when you feel lost, when you feel, there's a pandemic, you take a camera and get inspired by somebody else's moment and story and life. You capture, you celebrate that. And I think that when we understand how powerful the art is in that kind of way, when we really understand that the answer is really out there, we don't really have to pay for it. It's there and it's beautiful. We really discover another dimension of why we're here, because we're here to connect. When I lived in LA before pandemic, there's a place called the Farmers Market. When I was a little
Mm,
child in Cuba, the one thing I did was I had a balcony, and I would look down and I would see people walk and dogs, and everybody gets out of school at the same time, but everybody looks different every day. And there's an art in that, and watching. And you're like the best, one of those
mm,
people in this earth that are good at observing. And because
mm.
it heals
Thank
you,
you.
and it inspires you. and
I'm
and
very
not many
much
people
so.
understand, when you say stop and look at the roses, that is that
Yes,
is basically this conversation. It's like you really stop, you feel, and you know there is something there that will feed you, that will heal you, right? And you learn that really early in
yes.
life. What a luxury, Adam.
Danay, you said something so profound to me. It's such an important thing to me to feel able to observe the world and
Yeah.
observe a performance, observe a narrative that I might be working on. These are things that I think have been in my mind and in my soul for so long. My grandfather was an amazing observer, very quiet. I look at his photographs and I see this quiet man who could see the world through his eyes, but never push himself onto the people he was photographing or filming. And I think that's what I'm trying to do, is to witness, something without interrupting it. You know, you want to be a silent observer who participates but doesn't change the moment. And I think that's really where documentary photography and cinematography come together, is you are a silent witness to what's happening in front of you. And then by using your experience with cameras and lighting, you support those moments and you extend those moments. So yes, creativity and visual arts and visual storytelling, these are so important and such wonderful skills to be able to bring to a film set.
It's
and like
huge.
you observing out your window, what you would see, you know, you take those experiences and you bring them with you. And it gives me nothing but great pleasure to support the performers in front of me and to support the director to try to extend his or her vision, you know, to bring, you know, my little piece to that puzzle.
What can you tell the younger generations? How can you teach this? I feel like we have tapped into something that we need to really, you know, life is going so quickly, right? It's going so fast. When you stop and observe, it's like life stops, and it feels like you're in control because you took the time to observe.
Mm-hmm.
You're quiet. You become this observant. But and I think the reasons why you are such a good observant and comes from a family is because you feel. It's not, you're not just watching to watch. You watch to get to feel, to be connected to that.
Yes.
And your street photography is Adam literally stopping to feel that moment and capture it, and then feel it again as you take it home and observe what is being done, what happened in that second that will never be repeated again.
Yeah.
And I feel like the world needs that kind of a message to observe,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I would just, you're so right. Absolutely. It's not just watching, it's feeling a connection. And yes. I would love to encourage younger people wherever they are to feel that they have a place in the world as a visual storyteller, and to not be inhibited by the fact that now there are millions of people expressing themselves on Instagram every day. And how do I find my voice within that? I think you have to just look to your inner soul and find your own confidence that your voice is important as much as anybody else's, no matter what your background, you know, and that you can find your own voice by practicing, by observing other people, by experimenting. And now we have simple tools to be able to do that, and it doesn't cost a lot of money to, you know, you don't have to develop your films anymore, and you can pick up a phone and take photographs at the very, very least. You can practice and learn about visual storytelling, and I would just encourage people to try to do that, you know, just as they would practicing their instrument. If they're a musician, you practice your craft as a photographer. Soon enough, you start to learn, and then you can apply that to filmmaking.
Totally. And I want to just end with this funny story that we both share.
Yeah.
So we were in a film set. I was next to Frank, and Adam comes in and he's like, Danay, would you mind stepping here for a second? And you're like talking to people. I was like, what are we doing? It's like, 1 second, the background is going to look amazing. And I looked at him like, Adam, the background, what about me? And you were like, oh my gosh, of course. No, you lit up. It's just, It's just the background. And ever since that happened, I knew you were gonna laugh so much with this. Ever since that happened, hey Danay, we're gonna hope we work together again. And trust me, the background is gonna be brilliant. I was like, yes, it's all about. And every time I would go to set, I'm like, Adam, how's the background? Is the background good? You're like, it's perfect.
Danay, it's such a great story and will always be a wonderful memory. And the funny thing is,
I tell it and I can't stop laughing. It's like, because your face was like, oh.
I realized I completely said the wrong thing. But of course, to me, I'm trying to always give the best depth to a shot.
I know.
Allow a performance to come out. But of course, yeah, it just proves that cinematographers are not designed to talk to actors when they're in the middle of the process.
No, I have to say that forever bond me to you. I'll be like, if I ever work with Adam, the background is gonna be unbelievable. Well, it's one of those moments that you laugh and you respect and you love. Again, I see you as a painter. You were painting my background and
you are such a sensitive and understanding actress. Others might not have taken it so well.
The DP said that he was lighting up the background.
No, you bring such a beautiful atmosphere to the set. It was always a deep, deep pleasure to work with you in any scene that you did. It was inspiring to me.
Oh, my gosh. No, that
is what it's all about. I can promise you.
It was right back at you. Like I said, open every time I would show up on set, that little door open and I would see what's been created and painted. And I just had to take it to that level and emotionally and with words, which is my part. And I just wanted to say, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being a curious bug. Thank you for being that observant in the world that it's going by so quickly, and we are stopping to see your pictures because you stopped to take it, because you took the time and we learned through your lens, and we are inspired through your lens, and those moments that you create, they're very iconic in our show and in so many things that you've done and will continue doing. And trust me, I definitely want to work with you. I care about this background so much as you do. It's
very soon, Danay. Thank you so much. You are such a sensitive and such a creative individual, and I can't wait to work with you again.
It would be exciting.
Opportunity.
Yes,
it's been a pleasure to be able to actually share ideas offset where we have more time.
Yeah,
really, really grateful to you.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to drop some seeds of knowledge and wisdom and light and lighting up some love to, for every upcoming filmmaker, photographer, artist, and how to really nurture that part of us that cannot stop creating, that little place that we belong to, that it's hard to express and explain, and how we, how they're not alone. Somebody like you, like me, this podcast was born out of that creativity, feeling stuck and I'm needing to connect with other stories, with people that I adore. You know what I mean? This is the same thing. This is exactly what happened.
You've touched on it. I think that's really important also for any artist developing, not only to practice in your own time, but to talk with other people who are interested in it.
Yeah.
Right here, right now, I'm feeling inspired because we've had this conversation, and conversation is what it's all about.
Yes.
So find people who share your excitement about capturing the world, and that will drive you forwards.
It will spark stuff, and you don't have to just talk to other DPs. You can talk to people that are inclined to the same goal, right?
That's right. That's what's so exciting. And suddenly you discover something that you hadn't even thought of yourself because your friend has seen the world in a different way. And you go, wow, okay, that's cool. Now I can try this. So,
You become
yeah,
aware, right?
all artists, no matter what their experience, they need each other. We
Of
need each
course,
other,
we
and we
do.
need
Yeah.
to
So
support each other.
thank you for supporting this beautiful
Uh,
hour that flew by so quickly. I wish you were closer so we can continue it. But
Me too, Danay.
it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and thank you for your time. I know you're so busy, and you know this means a lot to me. I was very inspired to bring you in, and I appreciate everything you said. And yes,
Thank you.
let's keep fighting for that background because I am in for
Yes,
that.
background. Great. I can't wait, Danay. Thank you.
Thank you so
Let's do
much.
it.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.